Hi everyone, and thanks for being with me. I just want to thank a few people who I guess viewed my last post because it's done very well, and I really appreciate all of that. And for the 60 plus subscribers that I've got since, I want to thank you guys as well for being a part of this process and for helping me to get to my goal, which is some 10,000 subscribers by the end of the year. Help me get there. Simply subscribe. It costs you nothing, and it helps me, I guess, in order to, I don't know, feel appreciated, maybe, to create a discussion around subjects that I find interesting. This is why I do what I do, and I want to talk today a little bit about what are the values that the Labor Party and the Liberal Party have, and whether or not those values can be articulated and identified in a way that has meaning to you and I, and whether the values, if they are markedly different, if that would be enough to impact an election. Do you vote for people because you appreciate and understand their values? Now, I do need to say that I've taught subjects around values and beliefs for many years in many of the programs that I've facilitated. And I tell you what, values is the most unknown and obscure aspect of the whole process, because very rarely do we understand our own values, let alone articulate and understand the values of others. So, if we've got, I think a good example of a contradictory value or a value which is unhelpful, which is obvious to all of us, would be Donald Trump insulting and ridiculing people that he dislikes. Now, he's expressing a value of disdain, a value of, maybe it's a value of anger. It's more like a feeling, I guess, of anger. But, what he expresses doesn't fit with my values. As I understand it, which is really about not offending, not hurting, not harming other people. That's a core value for me as a social worker. So, but understanding and determining what someone's values are, I think is an interesting exercise, to say the least. So, in order to express this, I have captured a little bit of a video, or the beginning actually, of Q&A last night on the ABC, because George Brandis was asked a question about values from a young man who says he's a Liberal Party voter, and he was concerned about the values that were being expressed. So I thought I'd just use this as an opportunity for you and I to have a conversation about what values are, what values do you hold that are important to you. For example, honesty, integrity, they're important values for me. And it's important to be able to find ways to express those values and stand up against those that you believe are not expressing them. So one of the attacks, I guess, that have been against Albanese was that he was weak and he was a liar. Now, I didn't necessarily see much of that, and the Liberal Party, to be fair to them, had trouble to articulate exactly what it was that he was weak over and what it was that he was lying about. So they're interesting values, and I'm just wondering whether or not they're things that you either accept or not, or whether you even think about values. But this was the beginning of Q&A, and it sort of set the tone for the rest of the conversation on that program. So here's Albanese, this is not Albanese, this is George Brandis talking about this particular issue.
Chris Hanslow. Hi, Chris.
Hey, Patricia. I'm a millennial, but contrary to the stereotype, I'm a Liberal, and I've voted Liberal my whole adult life. While I fundamentally align with the Liberal Party's values that exist in our democracy, I've never felt more frustrated about the Liberal Party's inability to represent these values at the last two federal elections. They have my vote, but right now they don't have my faith. Is this election loss enough for the Liberal Party to realise it's time for a fresh approach, new leadership, and an overhaul of the way it connects with the voter base?
George Brandis.
Well, Chris, I agree with you, and I'm pleased to hear you say that you support the Liberal Party's values. I think the Liberal Party's values are good values that are the values of mainstream Australia, and that is why the Liberal Party historically has won a lot more elections.
Can I just note here that this verifies or validates, I should say, my argument is that here George is struggling to be able to say exactly what those values are. He does highlight it in just a minute, I think, to some degree, but most of us struggle to identify what those values are. And this is a problem that all political parties have. And if this is a problem that is to be resolved, then I guess we need to find a way to change our language so those values are at least understood by those people that are going to vote for us.
Then it's lost. But I think in this election and in recent years, the Liberal Party has not communicated those values as well as it had in previous times. It has itself, in some ways, lost touch with those values.
We haven't been told yet what the values are, I hasten to add.
These are the values of mainstream Australia, and there have been times at which the Liberal Party has seemed to be entranced with values or attitudes or prejudices even that are well to the right of.
Instead, values are not attitudes or prejudices. They're behaviours, particularly what people say, I guess, and what they do are behaviours. There is a difference.
Mainstream Australia. So I think that where the Liberal Party, obviously there'll be a process of seriously looking at what went wrong, and there are a lot of things went wrong, but there is nothing wrong with the Liberal Party's values. But its capacity to project those values through policy, through leadership, through its language, through its offering to the public, is, I think, where we let ourselves down.
George, what are the Liberal Party's values?
The Liberal Party...
I was waiting for that. This one was pretty good, actually. I was waiting for someone to ask, well, what exactly are those... What are those values we speak of?
His core value is to have a society in which everybody can be the author of their own life, in which they're not interfered with by government, in which there is opportunity and there is freedom. There is mutual respect for individuals, regardless of who they are, regardless of gender, race, sexuality, religion, background.
Yeah.
Incidentally, that is not a core value. That is a series of values. A core value is a value that underpins our whole existence. The reason why we're here, that is our core value. Most people don't understand their core value. It is within them, they just don't know how to articulate it because it's never been explored. But here he's going into... I'll just let George finish, and I've got some comments to make about this on the other side.
These are the Liberal Party's values, and as I said to Chris, in recent years we have seemed to be a narrower party than in fact we are.
Oh, great.
Okay, so Chris, I want to go back to you.
So I guess my point is that George could recognise that there are value issues, but couldn't distinctly describe what those values are. And this is a problem, because I believe if a political party is able to identify their core value, that is that one thing, and the stuff that George talked about applies to all organisations. This could be a core value that all organisations have, not just the Liberal Party, that we want a better society, they want equity and fairness and all that sort of stuff. And if you're able to articulate the equity and fairness, the stuff that is Trumpist, where you're asking for something that is not equitable, that is not fair, and the Voice comes to mind in relation to that, then, that is where you have a divide. You don't have a divide if your principles are the same. You don't. Because imagine, if, as George is saying, that the equity and fairness are kind of part of their values. Well, they're the same as the Liberal Party. But they're not. The point is that they're not, that there is a distinct difference between the type of values and the application of those values as expressed by George are different from what you see from the Liberal Party. So one is more, more like socialism, I guess, where we're looking at, and progressiveness, where we're looking at equity and fairness for all, and we're looking for policies that express that value. What you have with the Liberal Party is a notion of equity and fairness, but it isn't expressed in a way which aligns itself with those values. So my point is that there is a divide. Maybe values and so forth are basically the same, or a core value may be the same. It is the way it is articulated. It is the way it is expressed. It is the way the policies are developed, which will determine whether or not that value is being expressed in a way which is acceptable to the public. So when you have a value that is appropriately, well, firstly, when you understand what your value is, that's the first problem, because most organisations don't. I don't believe the Labor Party necessarily does, neither does the Liberal Party. But when you understand that value, you can then match your policies. You check it out against that value and say, we're upholding that value, that core value that we have. We're upholding that through our behaviour and through the policies that we're implementing. And to some extent, this applies to the way we communicate with each other as well. And it's really interesting to watch Albanese speak around this stuff, because in his address that he gave to the press yesterday, he did focus on respecting others and behaving in a respectful way. And I think that's an important aspect. But I know that I myself occasionally, I have a go at people because I get so agitated with the way that they are behaving, because it is an affront to my own core values. So I'm going to make a comment in relation to that, which I do often. And maybe sometimes I'm not very nice. I understand that as well. But that's born out of the frustration. And I think it's important to understand that even in those moments, there may be moments of conflict with my own values, because that isn't necessarily how I want to treat people. And it certainly isn't how I treat people face to face when I'm meeting them. So you can articulate some of that stuff if you're talking about somebody who has obviously more power and authority than you do, and it's politicians generally who have more power and authority than I do, and the press in particular, and to criticise Murdoch and the others is fair game. But it doesn't alter the core value. And I think the problem that we have in politics is a lack of understanding, as we've just seen from George Brandis, what that specific value is and how to express it appropriately. Look, let me know what you think in the section below. Oops, I didn't mean to put that on. Just let me know what you think in the section below, and please remember to subscribe to my channel, ring the bell for further notifications, do all the things that you need to do. In the meantime, take care, look after yourselves, and more importantly, be safe.